Some doors do not need to be broken down. They only need you to stop reaching for the handle. You have called it faith, loyalty, persistence, or simply refusing to quit. But when returning keeps costing your peace, compromising your obedience, and reviving the same destructive fruit, Scripture tells you to examine that door. Today, I want to show you 7 signs you are still reaching for a door God has been teaching you to leave closed. That door may be a relationship, an old opportunity, a ministry role, a job, a habit, or a version of your life God has already redirected. Not every ending is punishment. Sometimes an ending is protection wearing an uncomfortable shape. Discernment starts with an honest look at the doors you keep testing. These are not mystical signs.
They are biblical patterns that reveal when persistence has become resistance. Sign 1 usually starts smaller than you think. You keep checking if the door still moves. A message thread you have not deleted, though you told yourself you were done. A name you search for late at night just to see if anything changed. Or an old job listing you keep checking, an opportunity you keep revisiting, or a role you keep imagining yourself returning to. You call it staying informed, or keeping the peace, or simply curiosity. But Proverbs tells us to guard our hearts above everything else, because life flows from what we protect there. Every quiet check is a small door left cracked open. You do not need continued access to prove that you have healed. Ask yourself honestly, would I be at peace if this thread disappeared forever tonight?
If the answer unsettles you, that discomfort is worth bringing to God before it becomes a habit again. Sign 2 sounds like a search for wisdom. You keep asking people for advice, one conversation after another. Sometimes it is because you are genuinely confused, but sometimes, if you are honest, you are waiting for someone to finally say yes. Scripture does value counsel, and Proverbs says plans succeed with many advisors. But that wisdom was never meant to become a search for permission. If you already ignored 3 wise voices, the 4th conversation is not counsel anymore. It can become negotiation with what your conscience already knows. Are you seeking wisdom or are you searching for permission? A wise response is simple. Stop shopping for agreement and sit quietly with what you already heard. Sign 3 hides behind the language of grace. The same fruit keeps appearing, but you keep trusting a new promise more than the old pattern. A friend who apologizes but never changes. A job that promises differently every single time. Jesus said a tree is known by its fruit, not by its promises. Grace forgives the person, but grace does not require you to keep giving access to a pattern that keeps damaging your obedience and peace. Ask yourself, if nothing changes for another year, could I still call this healthy? If you already know the answer, that is not judgment. That is discernment doing its quiet work. Sign 4 enters your prayer life. Your prayers used to ask, Lord, what do you want from my life? Now your prayers have quietly become, Lord, please make this door open again. Scripture repeatedly shows that obedience sometimes means moving forward when God redirects the path. When your prayers exist to convince God instead of seeking Him, prayer has stopped being surrender. Are you asking God for direction or asking Him to approve the direction you already chose? Tonight, try praying without mentioning the door at all and notice what remains. If this is already bringing a face, a room, or a decision to mind, do not brush past that feeling. Write in the comments, Lord, help me see what I keep trying to reopen. You can call repeated knocking faith, but faith does not need to manipulate a response. There is a difference between waiting on God and trying to wear down a closed outcome. One posture says, Lord, lead me wherever truth requires. The other says, Lord, bless the direction I refuse to release. Only one of those prayers is surrender. Now, listen carefully, because the next signs often feel spiritual while they quietly keep you stuck. Sign 5 feels almost like peace. You feel calm only when you imagine the door swinging open again. But the moment you sit quietly before God, that same peace disappears. Galatians describes peace as fruit that grows from staying near the Spirit. Not a feeling that only appears around one outcome. Peace that exists only inside one imagined outcome is not surrender. It is control wearing spiritual language. Notice what happens when that imagined outcome is threatened. Do you become prayerless, restless, angry, or willing to cross a boundary you once respected? That reaction does not automatically reveal God's will, but it does reveal where your heart has become dependent. Whatever controls your peace is already asking for too much authority. Biblical peace does not ask you to ignore fruit, compromise conviction, or manipulate an outcome. Ask yourself, does my peace live in God's presence, or only inside one imagined outcome? Sign 6 begins when you rename what you already recognized. You once said clearly, "This is not healthy. This is not safe. This is not right for me." Now you are calling that same discomfort dramatic or oversensitive or simply a misunderstanding. In Acts 16, Paul and his companions were prevented from preaching in Asia and then kept from entering Bithynia. They did not force the blocked direction. They adjusted their path and followed the opening toward Macedonia. Loneliness can make a clear boundary feel cruel, but it cannot erase the fruit that made the boundary necessary. What truth did you recognize before loneliness taught you to rename it? Write down the reason you set that boundary before loneliness rewrites the story for you. Sign 7 is the door you already see in your mind. Picture a hallway you know too well, quiet, familiar, almost comfortable in its sadness. You are standing at a door you have stood at before, more than once, maybe more than you would admit out loud. Your hand rests on the handle, not moving, not turning, just resting there out of habit. You are tired, not from fighting for something new, but from repeating the same exhausted request to God. Revelation says, what Christ shuts, no one can open, and what he opens, no one can shut. That verse reminds us that Christ, not our desperation, holds final authority. Standing in that hallway again will not change the fruit that has already exposed the pattern. What do you keep reopening because you are afraid closure may never come? Letting go of the handle is not defeat. It is finally trusting him with what you cannot control. You already know which door this is. You knew before I described the hallway. So tonight, do one specific thing instead of returning to that same door. Say the name of that door quietly to God and ask him to help you release it fully. Do not check the thread. Do not ask the fourth person for permission, and do not stand in that hallway again tonight. Instead, ask him a better question. Lord, what do you have for me now that my hands are finally open? If this message has shown you a door you keep trying to reopen, do one thing right now. Write in the comments, Lord, help me surrender what I keep trying to reopen. That is not just a comment. It is the moment you stop defending the door and begin surrendering the outcome. Which of these 7 signs felt closest to something you are carrying tonight? And if someone you love is standing at their own closed door, send them this message today. If this word brought you clarity tonight, subscribe to Guard Your Spirit for more biblical wisdom and spiritual discernment.